I've been a podcaster for 11 years, and prior to that, I had a career in broadcasting for about 26, 27 years. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I mean, a lot on a variety of different subjects. And I think my favorite podcast of all time is The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. It came out a few years ago from Christianity Today, and it was hosted and produced and written by a guy named Mike Cosper. For those of us who are not part of the evangelical Christian community, it's pretty insightful, particularly since the evangelicals were a big part of Donald Trump getting elected in 2016 and 2024. The hero and the villain of Mars Hill was this guy named Mark Driscoll, who founded the church in 1996. And Mark Driscoll's brand was he's a punk rock preacher, not your father's preacher. Didn't dress like him, didn't talk like him, would call out what we would later call woke culture in Seattle. He's fighting culture wars here, there, and everywhere. Stuff that was perceived as gay was called out a lot. He was yelling at young men, telling them to stop masturbating and playing video games and get married and have some kids. Mark would reference Fight Club, one of his favorite movies, which is weird because Fight Club is a pretty gay movie. I mean, they did splice penises into the frames, Mark. Mars Hill grows and grows in the late 90s and the first part of the 21st century. In fact, they have campuses all over the state of Washington, Oregon, Northern California, even New Mexico. And at their height, they had about 12,000 attendees per week, making it one of the biggest megachurches in America. And Mark is extremely successful. He's a best-selling author. He's sought out all over the place as a spokesperson for the Young, Restless Reformed movement, which is sort of an offshoot of Calvinism. Mark later renounces Calvinism, but that's neither here nor there. In 2014, Mars Hill initiated an investigation into Mark for abusive behavior. This wasn't sexual stuff. This was, well, it sounds to me in some cases kind of like battery. He was being very coarse, yelling at people, not treating staff right, and as I say, maybe committing battery. There was, as I say, an investigation and a pathway towards some reconciliation with Mark, where he would make amends to the church. But Mark quit before that happened because God told him to.
And so Grace walked in and she said, I feel like the Lord just spoke to me and said what we're supposed to do. And I was like, I feel like the Lord just spoke to me and said what we're supposed to do. It's not what we wanted. It's not what we had agreed to. And it's not what we had planned for. And so I asked her, well, what did the Lord say to you? Because I didn't want to influence her. And she said, we're
released.
Yeah.
From Mars Hill.
Yeah.
We can take him out.
So he pieces out, becoming the deadbeat dad that he'd been warning against for many years. Mark goes away for a couple of years and shows back up in 2016 in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he plants the Trinity Church. And according to some people, he's doing some of the same abusive stuff that he was doing in Mars Hill. In 2024, Mark gets super into politics, and you can believe he is fully on board with MAGA. He would have people visiting his church like Charlie Kirk and Carrie Lake, and he would talk about how this was a battle of civilizations and there was only one choice to make for Christians. The Sunday after the election, Mark comes to the pulpit, tells his congregation in Arizona he's feeling a lot better. This video I'm about to show you is recent, and it's Mark criticizing a guy named Chip Gaines. I don't know the guy. Apparently he's on HGTV, very popular. He does home improvements or something. Mark has some problems because Chip apparently is being a little gay.
Just had an election. I don't know if you guys saw that. It seemed like a resounding national referendum to stop this spread of trying to sexualize children and normalize perverse behavior.
Mark, buddy, let me stop you there. Continue.
And so this behavior, all the way up till 1970, in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, it would have been considered in that day, as well as our own, the Bible on mental health. This behavior was listed as a mental illness during my lifetime. And it has gone from a mental illness to a civil right.
Pastor Mark and I were born the same year. We are exactly the same age. And no, in my lifetime, which has been spent entirely in the United States, it has not gone from a mental disorder to a civil right. Also, good use of psychiatry and psychology when it fits your needs, Mark, because I know some of the time you kind of dismiss it as feel good liberal tripe. At this point, if you're on the side of Donald Trump, you're on the side of the guy who is shielding the most prolific sex trafficker and child molester possibly in history, which makes me wonder, Mark, which side are you on? And maybe, just maybe, the church shouldn't pick a side when it comes to politics.